And so that is still for me a very passionate area of work that I'm interested in engaging in, of Israel, Ukraine, and the Russian invasion in 2022. So there's a
So hi guys, I'm here with Prof Tim, the world-renowned transitional justice expert, I guess, so to speak. And we're at the IGR in Gardens. And we're going to look at transitional justice and kind of the global barriers, and is these gestures by these Western states tokenism when we need to kind of solve real transitional justice through economic, transition. And then we're going to have a quick update on the AU and Prof Tim's meeting in Addis Ababa about security. As we have all these 14 conflicts on the globe, plus Tanzania's got a revolution, would you call it?
Yes.
Yeah, a revolution definitely on the way. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Prof Tim.
Thank you.
And we're so glad to have you in Cape Town as a Kenyan. It's so nice to have, people from everywhere in this beautiful city. So, what was your first memory of realizing the transitional justice needs to happen?
Thanks so much, Fergus. Well, I've always grown up in Africa. As a young child in Kenya, even though we had quite a comfortable upbringing, all around me, I could see that there were people less fortunate living in shacks, as you mentioned, in shanty towns, and you could see that there was an inequality in society. And I always felt that was wrong, but it was only much later when I did my university studies that gradually gravitated towards this field of transitional justice, which I've been working on now for the last almost 30 years, one could say. And so that is still for me a very passionate area of work that I'm interested in engaging in. And as you can see around us, there's so much more to be done, both within our countries across Africa, in South Africa, in Kenya, in other parts of the continent, but also around the world. I mean, the conflicts that we're dealing with right now, quite significant ones in Sudan, Mozambique, the Sahel region. We are seeing the uprisings now of the Gen Z generation in Tanzania. In Madagascar, they've just done it in Morocco as well. Around the world, terrible conflicts in Gaza, the invasion of Israel, Ukraine, and the Russian invasion in 2022. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help societies to deal with the past, surface the issues that they're dealing with, address the trauma and the woundedness that they have to enable them to actually become more cohesive and more stable and more peaceful. Ultimately, is the journey that we're on, I would say, as human beings, Fergus.
So do you think it's actually possible to achieve this kind of more stability, increase in people kind of finding fairness without addressing the core problem, which is that the colonial practices never really left, and the way they structured all these economies is set up as resource extraction, and like how there's going to be all this infighting, corruption, but the much deeper problem is the colonial economic structures that still exist?
100%. Well, the two are linked. Africa has, as you've just been mentioning, has a very long and tortured history. Not only colonialism, we can go back to slavery and the extraction of African bodies from the African continent, notably through the transatlantic slave trade. 12 million African bodies extracted, 1 million lost in the Middle Passage across the Atlantic Ocean. So African energy, in that sense, was extracted and utilized to build the industries of North America, Europe, Latin America. At the moment, we have a vast African diaspora, almost 100 million Afro-Latinos, 40 million African Americans, 22 million in the Caribbean and other parts of the world as well. And the colonialism then gave way to, slavery then gave way to colonialism. In the 1884, 1885 scramble for Africa, the Berlin Conference, that essentially carved up our continent. our beloved continent of Africa into these states that we're currently grappling with. And there was an artificial structuring and breaking up of communities. And you'll notice this if you go to the borderlands, that there are actually these are the same ethnic communities that have just been divided by an arbitrary border. And the intention of colonialism was to continue with the extracting of Africa's resources and exploitation of African people for the benefit of European metropoles at that time. And we have to mention the specific countries involved: the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Germany as well, and Italy. And that African energy again was utilized to build these European industrial powerhouses, which have then also continued to leverage that to their own advantage. Today we have these 55 states across our continent, but they are also subject to predatory economic globalization, and the extraction continues by other forms. The challenge now is that we have our so-called political leaders. I wouldn't call them political leaders. I might rather frame them as political predators who are extracting resources on behalf of the metropoles. And they are getting into all sorts of contracts that are essentially eliciting, extracting natural resources from Africa. As you know, Africa has almost 30% of the world's critical minerals, almost 8% of its oil. And so there's a lot of money to be made by very corrupt political and business elites that are colluding with foreign powers, external powers in Europe, North America. But now we have to also add China, Russia, and other parts of the world, the Emirates, the Arabian Peninsula, Emirates, Saudi Arabia as well. So that's where we are as a continent, and it's clear that as a people, we are still allowing this to happen. We can only achieve some form of resistance, collective resistance, if we come together as African people, which is why structures such as the African Union are absolutely integral and vital to enabling us to work as one, to function as one. South Africa, being a country that's gone through all of these phases of slavery, colonialism, and now faced with predatory globalization. We've seen the State of Capture report and the amount of money that was stolen from South Africa, estimated $35 billion, 500 billion rands, by the Guptas colluding with the Jacob Zuma corrupt regime, which is still embedded somehow, I would say, in the current governing party of the country. This extraction has led to the failure to deliver basic services to people in terms of housing, education, health, infrastructure. And that's why across South Africa you'll see quite a number of shacks are still prevalent. And this is the heavy lifting work that still needs to be done in terms of socioeconomic transitional justice or redress for the economic crimes of the past. There is a lot to be done, as I mentioned. So the field of transitional justice gives us an understanding of what needs to be done. When we come to engaging the decision makers, then we have to now enter the policy spaces and have engagements with them, try to get them to change the way they think and also the way they distribute resources. But it's only when we can transform the lives of people on the ground that we really say transitional justice is achieving the goal that it needs to achieve.
Yeah.
Let me stop there.
Are these gifts, giving back the Madagascan, the king of Madagascar and the two other skulls, or the Benin gold and the stuff given back this year by Netherlands and France, is that tokenism, or do you think that's an important part of the broader process of actually economic transitional justice?
Well, even though they're important gestures, I think at this stage very much they represent tokenism. Because, as you know, much more than these artifacts was taken from the African continent. We already discussed the transatlantic slave trade and how African bodies were extracted to benefit the economic growth of Europe and North America and Latin America. This year, 2025, is the year of justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, which is a theme that the African Union has adopted. And now the African Union has just decided to extend this to a decade. So it is now a decade for justice for Africans, people of African descent through reparations. And reparations is a very broad, prism or framework of transitional justice, which deals with repairing the harm, healing the harm, repairing the harm, restoring the dignity of those who have suffered, the victims, the survivors, their descendants, which essentially means now we're looking at a process where Europe has to be quite genuine and engaging with this theme of reparations and reparative justice. And, a few artifacts, a few books, a few museum pieces is not going to cut it. Essentially, we need to look at much deeper forms of reparations, not only monetary compensation. That is only one aspect of it. The most important aspect of it actually is a genuine apology from the descendants of the beneficiaries of slavery and colonialism and apartheid. And on the basis of that apology, a determination and a commitment to make equal or to repair or to restore that which was broken or stolen. And in this case, when we talk about the extraction of human bodies, how do you even put a price on that? You can't put a price on it. But there are certain ways that we can approach this in a practical policy sense by talking about debt cancellation for Africa. As you know, Africa is heavily indebted to global institutions which are dominated by Europe and North America. There's also the issue of climate reparations, where Africa is now perhaps to be one of the hardest hit regions in terms of the climate change that has taken place around the world, notably the Sahel and the Horn of Africa. We're going to witness tremendous fluctuations in weather, which will affect the communities that live there. And also the redress for historical extraction of resources. So debt cancellation, climate reparations, using, for example, the IMF loss and damage fund to restore an imbalance between African countries. This is socioeconomic transitional justice. This is reparative justice that we need to pursue as Africans. And the campaigning is being done very much across the African continent, other parts of the global south in solidarity with each other. But we need to get the policymakers in the global north, notably Europe, North America, to actually get their minds around the importance of moving beyond just mere tokenism and redressing the global imbalance that exists. This is really a world remaking exercise. It's about systemic repair, which, Europe loves talking about working together in partnership with Africa. But this asymmetry of power, this hierarchy persists since colonialism, apartheid, and slavery must be redressed through these very practical processes. And then we can begin to talk about a transformation in the mindset of the Europeans and North Americans in terms of how they view and engage with Africa, not as a subsidiary client that they must manipulate and exploit, but actually as fellow members of the human race, members of humanity that must be respected and have their dignity restored.
And who's kind of fighting for that? Like, who's actually pushing for this debt relief or debt eroding and climate reparations? Which actors are actually moving forward with that? Is there any success, or is it just met by a stonewall? Because there's all these powers in the north are also complaining about their cost of living. So kind of, it's just the 1% of even those countries that are benefiting. So it's such a difficult thing to do, but are we making any progress there?
Incremental small steps in terms of progress. In 2000, there was the Jubilee campaign, debt relief, which made some incremental progress, did not really achieve the full debt cancellation that we were aiming for. So the work still continues. This year, the International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion on climate reparations, which again gives us a very strong legal basis to make this case for reparations. In Africa, there are a number of citizen-led initiatives such as Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity that have brought together a coalition of actors that are mobilizing at a grassroots civil society basis and social movements to put this issue on the agenda, maintain it on the agenda. At the legal side, there are legal networks that are already putting on the table the request for advisory opinion on the rights to reparations for Africans for slavery, colonialism, and apartheid. So there are all of these initiatives that are taking place. We need to basically build networks.